Trudeau was always getting into trouble. Mark Carney, like, if he was a spice, he'd be flour. He's so boring.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are thrilled to have back on the show one of our good friends that we've actually met through our journey of Northern Perspective. We've done videos with him before. We've revealed him as the genius behind a lot of the branding design of Northern Perspective that we switched over back in October of 2023. And he has, really come into his own with his own design business. You can check that out on elliemac.com, and that will be in the description for you to take a look at. If you're interested in any really high-end professional quality design, this is the guy you want to go to. We're going to check this his site out right at the end of this video, just as a bit of a showcase, because if I had something to design, I would want to spend some money with this guy. But anyway, you knew him as Vesper. He is now coming into his own as Ellie Mac, and we just call him Ellie. So Ellie, welcome back to Northern Perspective. It's amazing to have you back.
Hey guys, how are you?
Oh, we're just
staying out of trouble for the most part.
I hope so. Your journey started with a whole lot of trouble around you, and I've been following you guys vehemently and still following you. You're doing a great job, and I really am happy for both of you where you've gotten to. The success is a testament to the work that you've put in, and I'm excited to be on.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. It's a lot of fun to talk with you on some of this stuff, because even though your forte isn't politics, there's a lot of crossover from your specialization, because when it comes to really anything in the real world, there's a component of perception and brand that goes along with it. We talked about the downfall in our last chat a while ago, about the downfall about the NDP brand, Trudeau's brand, and a lot has changed since then. And we've gone through the recent election. Mark Carney has taken over. Just give us your take on how the election went through. Obviously, a lot of Canadians, including ourselves, are disappointed with the result, but we are where we are. So as we see how Mark Carney is starting to govern Canada, the bills he's released, what's your initial take on Mark Carney's brand and how he's presenting himself?
Well, I mean, if let's say Justin Trudeau was Bud, Carney would be Bud Light or Budweiser. And it's essentially, so here's the thing, the guy is not, he's not a clown, for one. I mean, he's not bringing his running shoes to when the King of England comes, to the House of Commons, wearing Irish colors, by the way, which makes absolutely no sense. This guy is the male Greta Thunberg, Justin Trudeau. He will fight for anything, anytime. He needs a cause, or there's no purpose in his life. And the sad part is, when we met, we basically had a megalomaniac, egotistical psychopath running the country, and now we have a shrewd British Donald Trump. He's a Canadian Emmanuel Macron, right? He's a globalist. He's a European, and he's running things like von der Leyen out in Europe, And so, in my mind, it's actually really simple. The guy is not as woke as Trudeau, but his policies are very detrimental. I wouldn't say he's an extremist. I will say that he is an opportunist. Let's talk quickly about branding here. From a brand point of view, Mark Carney has not done a whole lot, not even anywhere near what Justin Trudeau has done, which makes him not as fun to mock, to be honest with you. You can only mock a guy so much because he stays quiet. He barely does any interviews. And in the back of my mind, his brand is overshadowed by the liberal brand. Do you understand what I'm saying, Tanya? Like, it's not even so much him, right? So Justin had his brand, and he captured the liberal brand and turned them into basically poo-poo. But Mark Carney comes in, the brand is poo-poo, but we don't have enough on him yet that is scandalous. Like, we don't have Mark Carney blackface. We don't have Mark Carney wearing the Punjabi thing, doing the dance in India. We don't have Mark Carney wearing, I don't know, God knows what. Okay, he's just a bland guy, and he's inauthentic. Elbows this, elbows that. I played hockey. I'm from Edmonton, but I make millions of dollars from the UK, and I'm nothing Canadian. I brought on Mike Myers, and that means I'm Canadian. So from a brand point of view, he himself, it's more his policies rather than his personal life that's really at stake. Although for a long time ago, he was involved with something with Evan Solomon. I don't know if you guys remember that whole racketeering with the painting and illicit buying of paintings and auctions and whatever. But apart from that, I mean, like I said, he's like a Bud Light of, Justin Trudeau. I mean, I'd be eager to hear what you guys think, or if you agree with what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think what the Liberals needed was a boring leader. I think that's what they really, really needed. And he came in almost trying to run as a conservative, in that he's like, look at my resume. I'm a banker. I'm an old white man. I'm everything that the Liberal Party was telling you to hate for the last 10 years. One of the stories that we actually heard from Bob Bertina was after Bob Bertina was elected in the 2015 election, and he attended his first caucus meeting. Justin Trudeau comes in and he says, "You know what the problem is with our government is that all these rules were written by old white men." And Bob Bertina, who was in his 70s at the time, is looking around like, "Okay, so I'm the problem."
He's not talking about me. He's not talking about me. No, but you know what the ironic thing in all this is forget that just look, everything Justin Trudeau is it's like watching Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Canada lived for 10 years under a I don't know, some kind of a methamphetamine psycho trip or something that we've all just had to watch and endure. And it was aggravated through the period during COVID, and it got aggravated during in different ways, right? In different provinces. The Arrive Can scandal, which we've recently just also seen some kind of a conclusion to. But I think with Mark Carney, and here's the thing, let's face it, he's back to like Jean Chrétien era. Like it or not, okay? He's a lot more business savvy than Jean Chrétien. He did work under Stephen Harper. So to the people that are on my side, the conservative side, I mean, we also have to be aware of the fact that just because the guy is a liberal, and let's not forget, and I think I'm talking to the audience here, they wanted him before they wanted Justin Trudeau back all the way back to 2014. There's video records of this where they tried to lull him to be the next prime minister, but he was like, "Nah, bro, I got millions to make out in the Bank of England, out in the UK. I'm not going to make a whole lot, to be honest with you here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the UK, make my money, and then start basically this whole green, scam and scandal and everything, GFANS and ESG and everything. And when I'm done with that and I've literally sucked all the milk that I can out of that, then I'll come back." And they're like, "Oh, perfect timing. Justin, everyone hates him. You're coming back. You want to do it? All right, I'll do it. I mean, I'll help him a little bit, and then I'll just do it."
Well, and I think that's really important to kind of explain the difference, especially personality-wise, between Trudeau and Mark Carney, whereas Trudeau was always getting into trouble. Mark Carney, like, if he was a spice, he'd be flour. He's so boring, right? Like, there's nothing
exactly
that you can point at this guy and go, well, he did blackface, or he assaulted a woman in the House of Commons, or he did this or he did that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't say any of that about Carney.
No.
Well, there's the one thing that was going around about him and Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein, and yeah, there's a couple of pictures where Maxwell and Epstein were at the same,
but so was Trump. So
Right.
was Steve. I'm sure Stephen Harper met with. Everybody has met this guy, and so you can't
and there's
use
some
that.
fake pictures out there as well with Carney and Maxwell where they're like looking in two different vantage points, and people are trying to create something to put them together. And we have no love for Mark Carney and some of the policies that he's bringing, but we have to stay in the realm of facts. When we want to criticize this, because otherwise you start putting that stuff out there, and if you're the one pushing that, you lose all credibility because you're literally pushing something that isn't even true.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, look, we should talk about this a little bit later. There is a whole lot of stuff that's out there now from every side that's basically pointing to things that, while people are unable, in my opinion, people are unable to distinguish between how to actually look at what a fact is versus what a conjecture or speculation is. And unfortunately, a lot of good people who trust a lot of other people hear those people who have some influence, and whether it be Elon Musk all the way down, say things that are unsubstantiated. And because it's them, they kind of hearken to that authority figure and say, well, because X and Y says so. I mean, I teach this to my kids. I'm sure you guys are also very keen on teaching a lot of young people, including Vincent, like, listen, always scrutinize. Don't just take us at our words. Look into whatever it is that you have to do, whatever it is that I'm saying. I might be wrong. How else would somebody catch me? If you're just going to believe everything, Vesper says or Ellie says, then what world are we living in? And we form these echo chambers and we become cultic. And so this is happening. It was massive on one side, but it's now beginning to even happen on this side. And I think there's a third split faction to this within Canada, because there's a fracturing that keeps happening, I think, even on the conservative side of things, where conservatives, there's a two-sided thing. But I want to know if you guys want to talk about this now, or should we cover this later?
Well, we'll dive into it after we get through this next topic, which is Bill C-2. Now, Bill C-2 is it's a bill that a lot of people are raising red flags about. We've been raising red flags about. There's, I think, three main concerns that are being talked about with Bill C-2. Number one, it's being called the Secure Borders Act, but there are aspects to this that even people on the CBC, which is one of the posts that you put up on X, they were very concerned about this bill. Number one, giving the government the right to go through your mail and open it, which is a federal offense at this point, without a warrant.
Wait, you mean governments want to overreach? No.
No.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem. That's what they're there for.
It's not a problem. It's a design feature, not a bug, right?
That's right. Well, but it'll be interesting to see what happens, if C-2 actually gets to committee stage, because this is where I think the Conservatives, they won't lose a lot of political capital if they do vote against it. And if it does get to committee stage, it'll be interesting to see what does stay in. So that's the other aspect here. But so we have the mail. The second part of it is the fact that they would be able to just access your information from the internet service providers out there without a warrant. And the last part is preventing people from donating $10,000 or spending $10,000 in cash to specific organizations, which can lead to a slippery slope, as we chatted with John Carpe from the Justice Center of Constitutional Freedoms the other day. Okay, well, if they're going to, if that's something that's going to be an issue, then they need to then in fact monitor how much you're spending. And if they need to monitor how much you're spending in order to tell if you're complying with that law, then that can lead us down this path to a central bank digital currency, and then they would have complete control over the economy and understand exactly who is spending what and where, and that leads to all sorts of Orwellian issues that we don't even want to think about.
I mean, So we disagreed to some extent because remember, all this is being mostly done under the auspice that there's a drug fentanyl problem between going between the U.S. and Canada. Now, I've done research over this for months, and I to be honest with you, ever since Trump said, like, fentanyl is pouring into the southern border, and it became this whole I don't know what you want to call it, with him and Carney, where we devoted, I think, $1 billion or something to surveil the border and so on and so forth, to reinforce our CBSA or whatever. I think it was basically this whole tactic from the United States with Canada that you guys. Now, we do have a massive fentanyl problem. I think all of us can agree about that. But do we have an international U.S.-Canada fentanyl problem?
To
no.
the degree in which it's been reported.
Right. And so, like everything the government does, they need something to make. They're looking for a problem to create more bills to get more authority. It happened throughout COVID. They broke several charter rights and violations, and they did it under emergency use acts and so on and so forth. So did the United States. By the way, people not too long ago forgot that Donald Trump was the guy that did the Emergency Act for his American bivalent COVID production, blah, 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 blah. And now suddenly he's like completely anti this. Dude, but you're the one that put Fauci in. You're the one that did all this under Emergency Act, and you gained more leverage and power. And I think this is what's happening here, to be completely honest. So Bill 2 is capitalizing on an actual domestic problem and needing to show this is why we need this level of surveillance. Now, it's unjustified in the sense that, yes, within Canada, I can understand how this bill, some parts of the bill, work to help bolster the security that we all need with drug traffickers and terrorists. I get that. And I get where, for example, if they want to check, let's say the police officer, I believe that's the one that we were talking about, that the police officer can just stop you and not need a warrant, for example. And I know we had disagreed at some point. And I said, well, I mean, what if in that particular moment there was, a gang of thugs that just were doing something very, very shady, and they suddenly hid things in their pockets? Typically, he would need to go to a judge to get a warrant, and on and on and on. But they want to remove that, where if he has probable cause, he doesn't need the warrant, and he could just, what do they call it again? Extraneous circumstances or something?
Yeah, so there's already something like that in progress. Now, again, to the audience, I'm not a lawyer, so this may not be a perfect explanation. But, for example, if a police officer sees you committing a crime, such as maybe you're trying to destroy evidence from another crime that you've committed, they can stop you. If they see you trying to murder somebody, they can stop you. They don't need a warrant. They can stop you, and they can seize the evidence at
What if they can run
place.
into the house, though, Tanya? What if
they can. So if for example, there's a police officer who's walking down the street and he sees through your big bay window that you're trying to murder your spouse, they can break through the door and stop you and collect the evidence because a crime is being committed in progress in plain view of the officer.
Or even if he hears what sounds like a struggle, he doesn't specifically see
right.
it.
We're not talking about probable cause here. We're not talking about probable cause. We're talking about evidentiary, very evident crimes being committed. But if you suspect, let's say there's a cell in Montreal or a cell in Vancouver that's doing this through China, through whoever, through Russia.
You need a warrant to do that.
Right. And so to some degree, if this whole thing is leveraging the whole drug domestically, I can understand why they would want to reinforce that. What I don't understand, and I think our discussion was to clarify, where, yes, this is a slippery slope. This can be a slippery slope. Will it be, though? I suppose that's the question, right? I mean, how...
Well, and the problem is people that there's different ways that people will look at bills like this and legislation like this. There's people that will look at the legislation directly on its merit and what it's allegedly trying to do. And if that is the only frame of reference that you're looking at any legislation, you will never find, in many cases, you will never find fault with any bill ever. But the issue is when you're writing and evaluating legislation, you must always look at, okay, what is the furthest that a future government could take this legislation? And if that leads to somewhere very bad, where there's a power grab or it's infringing or completely removing the rights of the citizens it's allegedly trying to serve, then that is where it fails the test. And that is where you need to say, you know what? We need to do something about this. Is it Gandhi, or is it, some figure of peace that is running this government today? Okay, might be all right. But what if Hitler is the one who is actually running the government tomorrow under this same legislation? Is it still going to be used that way?
I mean, let's be honest, though, man. We're living in an era of wolves in sheep's clothing anyway. You can't tell the bad guys from the good guys and the good guys from the bad guys anymore. If we're all honest, and I know everyone in your audience is completely on board with this. Look, I've become a little bit more cynical over the years, ever since we met. Not because I don't believe in the written law, not because I don't believe in these things, but let's face it, folks, we've seen the law get trampled, whether, by just pure negligence or just outright denial of anything that the law stands for. There's no law if you don't enforce the law, right?
Yeah, there's a very two-tier justice system in this country.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking... Okay, so for example, one of the things that we just recently saw was how the Auditor General basically reviewed the GC Strategies ArriveCAN stuff. Like, okay, great. What are we getting? $20 million back? Let's say 40. Who cares? Point is, what about the $64 billion that no one is talking about that is gone out of Canada throughout that whole period?
Yeah, because of CERB and CEBA, yeah.
Right. So it's not like we don't have laws, guys. It's that and I've come to realize this. I don't know if Ryan and Tanya, you both have come to this. It's not so much that we don't have the laws for this. It's that we don't have the people with the backbone to enforce these things, right? Or
they don't have the tools, right? Like this was the whole complaint about C-63, is that they wanted to put in all of these new laws to stop people from posting things online and things like that. Whereas a lot of the criticism of it was the fact that we actually already have laws to deal with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not being applied, and it's just not being enforced.
Or you hear stories of children being assaulted and the perpetrators going free because there's not enough judges to try the cases.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot in domestic
Ontario,
abuse,
yeah.
And yet they have enough judges to prosecute a mischief trial for two protesters at the Freedom Convoy. But isn't that interesting? But this is the issue, and even the police officers and all the unions. This is why they were all wanting to back the Conservatives in the last election, is because the Liberals are creating more problems for them, in that they're having to chase after the same guys over and over and over and over again, and they don't even have time to chase the new guys.
It really is bureaucracy, right? I recently also posted something of a CSIS kind of debacle. It was an 18-post thread of everything CSIS was wrong, was basically reviewed and found to be guilty of by NCIRA, which is basically the review agency over CSIS. How they periodically never shared any data with the RCMP, how they completely mismanaged the department, how their intel is never properly done, how many times they actually broke the law, the CSIS Act and all. So it really is, the bureaucracy has become so, I don't know, man. It's like everyone is in it for themselves. There is no more patriotism in our government. Now, I know you would say maybe the Conservatives are more patriotic. That's fair. Remains to be seen. But let's be honest. I mean, we're not dealing anymore with just the tools and the laws, mostly. I think what I'm trying to say is that the people running these institutions are in it for themselves. They might have started, right, like for the people. And at some point throughout the ladder, I think what happens is they see how convoluted and how messed up and how many ladders and how many slides there are. At some point, they just do the best they can and try to get the most attention and maybe, I don't know, profit out of this. And we get things like Bill C-2, which, to be honest, look, the $10,000 thing in cash makes no sense. Because, first of all, if you're a drug dealer, you're probably working in crypto anyways. Either crypto or you're working in... By the way, this is what a lot of people don't know. Crypto was initially designed for drug dealing. People, not a whole lot of people know this. All right, when Bitcoin started, it was because it was illicit drugs. Look it up. This is why this was created, because it gave you on the blockchain, which is where your digital wallet is, basically anonymity. And these people, folks, they don't trade money like you think. They'll never pull their money out of the blockchain.
Wait a minute! I don't roll up to Rocco's place with a briefcase anymore.
That's the 80s.
That's so disappointing.
No, hold on.
That's the 80s, man.
That's lethal weapon type stuff, man. That I'm too old for this, kind of stuff. We're talking about what they do is, and for people that don't know how crypto works, it's basically this: it's a digital wallet. You have digital money that was purchased using real money, and now that money flows into the ether. Now we can track it, but we don't know who some of these people are.
It's perfect for laundering.
It's designed for laundering. There's no more need for diamond smuggling. Not that it doesn't happen, blood diamonds and so on. But think of it this way. How are you going to track an anonymous account that has basically, 2 Bitcoins, which is valued at like $300,000 right now? He decides to send Ellie half a Bitcoin, and you're like, why? There's no receipt. There's no invoice. He and I could have met in Portugal or Turkey and said, hey, you know what? Here you go. Here's the goods. Now you transfer me half a Bitcoin worth of these goods. Well, what are you going to do with your half a Bitcoin? Oh, I'm going to trade. It's a bartering system in the background. It's the shadow currency that everyone can use. Now, can you pull it out into real Canadian dollars? You can. And there's a whole process. It's legal. But most of it is done under the guise of completely under the radar transactions. This is where that $10,000 thing makes no sense. This is like as if I still think that all the criminals are stuck in the 1980s, like you said, Ryan. They pull up with a briefcase. Hey, I got $10,000 here. Do you have right? Hey, do you want this, man?
These are all $1 bills.
Right, type of thing. like as if, if it wouldn't be so cartoony, it wouldn't be as believable as it is right now. Because for me, for you to put that in $10,000 transactions and cash and withdrawal and whatever, like, what do you think most drug dealers use $10,000 these days? No, it's not how it works. It's not. Now, one thing we will say, I'll give them this. Okay, I'll defend them. Recent drug fentanyl busts and methamphetamine and all these things. I don't know if you've noticed in Canada and the United States, they often not only catch weapons, drugs, all these other things, but usually large sums of cash. What does that have to do with you stopping people from pulling out $10,000 cash? Like, what if I pull out 10 and then the next day I pull out 10 and then the next day I pull out 10? I could get to, in a month, $30,000. I don't have to say why.
Here's the thing with this. They're worried about stopping $10,000 in cash. Like, if criminals were actually concerned with this, they wouldn't be using cash already. They'd be rocking up to Rocco, and he'd be like, "All right, man, I got your stuff. I got like 50 keys right here." Pulls out his frickin' Interact card and says, "All right, you take plastic because it's a lot easier than carrying around all of those dollar bills. So can you take plastic?" Well, no, we can't.
But you know what? I mean, look, and it's not a slight on your viewers or anything, but let's face it, most senior people, most people that are not really connected into the online space and into these bills and into all this, a lot of people are very comfortable just going along with whatever the government says because, look, they have kids, they have a family, and in fact, I don't have time for this. I'm stressed out. I got a mortgage. I got this. They're not looking at what the government's doing. And for a very long time, they got away with a lot.
And I think that's another thing is that we as Canadians are kind of like, well, our government wouldn't do something so horrible. It's almost an arrogance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you recall this, Tanya, but so CBC, when they used to do their job, and CTV, actually it was CTV, they caught on when Chrétien was embroiled in a pay-for-play, basically, kind of a thing with GlaxoSmithKline when they were developing the H1N1 virus. Chrétien gives them $300 million, and then they find out that same company, GlaxoSmith, donated $50,000 to the Liberal Party. This was in 2001, 2002, okay? So if we're talking like in a period of 20 years, nobody, like, now we're all finding this. It's almost as nobody cared because I could afford to buy a home. I could afford to buy a car. Nobody was forcing me to buy an EV. I could go on vacations. They weren't so unbelievably expensive. And so in some ways, I think it's precisely because it's hit everybody's wallet, and the fact that COVID showed that the government can trample your rights if it wants to, that everybody finally woke up and said, hey, what country are we living in here? What are we doing? And I think that the emergence of channels like yours have facilitated the parsing all that information to the viewers to understand, guys, this has been happening for decades. We're just seeing how deep it actually goes. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and this is a perfect dovetail to then talk about the fact that one of the trends that we're seeing, unfortunately, is that there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of either misinformation or disinformation.
Junk information.
Information that is either accidentally put out there that's wrong, or it's intentionally put out there that's wrong. One of the ones that we were our attention was brought to recently was that they're trying to one channel, and it was a tiny channel out there, AI channel, and it was trying to say that they some judge had issued a new recount in the Carleton riding and found that Pierre actually won, and Carney is no longer prime minister. So that's one of the things that is going on out there, and it's complete garbage. You know, there's nothing backing it, and there's no source for it. So you're getting all of this information out there, both on the left, now on the right, and it is serving nobody. And the only thing that it's doing is it's confusing literally everybody and causing them to then trust no sources of information. And then if you have a completely uninformed citizenry, well, how does any government end up being held to account at that point if nobody trusts anything that they're being told?
Yeah, I still remember walking into my philosophy class in college, and my teacher, I heard that he was a bit weird. And the first question that he asked us all after he wrote something on the board, I forget what it was, he looked at us and said, do any of you believe you're actually sitting on a chair? And I was like, I looked around, and I'm like, okay.
That's an excellent question, actually.
And I'm like,
because
okay.
I come from a philosophy background.
So I'm like, okay. And then he's like, how do you know the chair is real? And back then I was a very different man, so you'll forgive me. I said, if I threw it at you, would it be real? And he kicked me out of the class, and and I was reported.
And that's Elliott's whole career in philosophy.
I said it out loud too, and I was like, you know what? Maybe he's joking, so I'll joke too. Turns out he wasn't joking, and so he reported me to the dean, and I wasn't allowed back into that class. He's like, yeah, I was scared for my life. I'm like, dude, just because I'm 200 pounds. Stocky and everything didn't mean I was going to kill
and from
you.
Lebanon.
Yeah. Hey. I think the question is, there are some absurdities that on their face, most people, look, coming from a marketing and counseling background and helping people out in terms of strategy, one of the things we know is that human beings tend to favor entertainment over education, right? The word... and I've taught this to my kids, the word amuse is actually the antonym to the word muse, which is to think, to consider, to ponder, to meditate on. Imagine all that stuff. The opposite of that is amuse. The being the antithetical to that, musing. People would prefer to not think and basically be entertained, which is why things like tabloids and so on, when we were growing up, aliens landed on Everest and all that stuff. Like, we know it's not true, but we gotta listen to it. We want to be entertained. And so what's happened is, with social media, what's happened, and a lot of people, and listen, don't take this the wrong way, but a lot of people that do YouTube, unfortunately, who don't source their information or anything like this, can make things amusing and can make things sound very provocative. Heck, I do it all the time with my branding. Now, I have an ethical backbone. If I think the thing that I'm going to be working on is really not worth what it is, if you come to me and say, I'm going to pay you, and I've said this before on other channels, if like on Clyde, when I first met him, he said to me, like, what do you do if somebody gives you something that's horrible and they're willing to pay you a lot of money? I'm like, I'm the kind of person that I believe that I have to hold myself accountable for whatever it is that I'm promoting. Now, I'll help you promote your brand, as I did with you guys, but you have to stay ethical and you have to keep your integrity throughout the process. If at any point I feel like you're shady or you're going to flip things on their backs and then kind of go around it, I'm not going to work with you. I'm not going to help you. I believe in working with integrity. We're living in an era where, at this point, and I mean, to some degree, I can't fault it given our Canadian economy and Western economy, money really is, for the creators of these things, the driving force in this. But people are not usually in the habit of doing the kind of research that maybe you guys do or I do. They're doing their 9 to 5. They have 3 kids. They have 4 kids. Who knows? They have a whole lot of things to take care of, mom and dad. They're not going to fact check everything. And what they're going to go for is very sensational things. Heck, my wife sometimes comes and tells me things that I have to correct her on because, frankly, she's like all mothers and all women that are married, they overworked all the time. They don't have time to read a bill. She sometimes walks into the room and goes, "Oh, you're reading a government bill. How good for you. I'm doing 20,000 other things. You want to help?" I'm like, "I don't know, this is really hard. I need to study this." She's like, "Very good. Good job. Thank you so much." Thank you. She called me Mr. Canada once. I'm like, "Yeah, right." Like a quick jab, like, thank you. Thank you for that. But
when you get promoted to Captain Canada, now you're in real trouble.
Let's face it. Most people are not going to look up the stuff that I mean, they rely on you guys, and even your audience. I'm telling you, scrutinize them. Don't just believe 100%. Anybody. But 100%. You know what? If it's entertaining, right? If it's very entertaining, and there's flashy things that come on, and you crack jokes, and you make, I don't know, impressions, and you do this, you can keep an audience engaged enough where you could make something sound very believable. And yeah, we're living in an era of misinformation, disinformation for a long time. What made it worse is that the Liberal Party, who was engaging in the greatest amount of misinformation and disinformation under Trudeau, was the one accusing everybody else of doing it, which created in everybody a complete lack of trust at all in anything that is government, precisely because of Trudeau. And now everything is up for grabs, right? If Mark Carney says water is wet, hold up, we need to make videos about this. He said the water is wet. Can you believe a thing that he says? And we've gone completely the opposite way in terms of reasoning. There is a middle where phantasm and complete cynicism meet, and I think it's called reality. And most people don't like the idea of reality because honestly it's boring, it's not amusing, and people,
or sometimes it's scary.
Yes, absolutely. And so when I do a brand, for example, I'm actually working with a client right now on something where they want to evoke a sense of joy, exuberance, and on and on and on. And I tell them at the end of the day, I'm like, look, it's just a new line of toothbrushes. Okay, like there's only so much that I can push exuberance when people look at a toothbrush. And this is like, we're talking, I know they're not going to mind, we're good friends, but I tell them, listen, this line of toothbrushes that you're working on to concept, they're beautiful, they're unique, but let's face it, I'm not gonna be sleeping next to my toothbrush all night saying, so the idea here is that we're creating false narratives for the people that do create these, the AI people that create like scripts and everything, this is all money. And if I could tell this to anybody, guys, flashiness and things that sound right don't mean they are right. And the only way to know is not to say just go to Northern Perspective. It's you have a phone in your hand, read for yourself, look into it, parse the data yourself, see if I'm saying something that's true or not, see if Ryan and Tanya are saying something that's true or not. Because at the end of the day, if you just want to sit back and I feed you what I want, then yeah, some parents feed their kids a lot of junk food, other parents feed their kids healthy food. And right now, people are in social media, it's traveling everywhere within social media. And yeah, you want to call them out. I call the people that do things out. But at the end of the day, if the people want amusement, hearkening back to, I know it's going to sound boring, but like even in Rome, right? I mean, they brought back the Colosseum for a reason, right? Caesar wanted to completely distract the crowd from all the shady stuff that he was doing in the background to the wars, how bad the economy was about to collapse and all this stuff. And just, yeah, let them kill each other. Literally, let them kill each other.
Well, and it was a lesson that modern governments really took to heart, because we have new coliseums. They're called stadiums. Yeah. And that is, you look at the average person, especially the Americans, but in Canadians as well. And you say, what's your favorite hockey team? And they can tell you, and they can name off the top 5 people. They know how many goals they've scored. They know how many assists they have. They know what their time on the ice is. But then you say, who's your member of parliament? And they have no idea.
By the way, if you think it's any different in the United States,
it's
the same.
Well, what I will say is the average American probably does know who their governor is, and they probably do know who their congressman is, but that doesn't mean they pay attention to any of the laws whatsoever.
No,
they're just they're a little bit more.
Well, I mean, back in the day, Jay Leno used to interview Americans. You guys remember those on the late night? He'd go to Americans. He'd actually ask people, who is this? It was the vice president of the United States. They're like, I don't know. One guy said Abraham Lincoln. The man is dead. Look, we want to encourage people to think, but on another side of things, there's an element of this where I think I feel bad because I might have a little bit more time, or maybe I have the tools or the skills to do this, to fact check everything for myself. Most people, unfortunately, don't either have the time, they don't have the energy, they don't have the heart, or they don't have the tools. And sorry, some people don't have the intellect, frankly.
Well, and this is where I want to say, I don't blame people, right? I don't blame people for the fact that you don't know who your member of parliament is. I don't. And I understand why a lot of people don't know who their member of parliament is. They don't know about the SDTC scandal. They don't know about RiveCan. They don't know why the Trudeau government was the most corrupt government in Canadian history over the last 10 years. It's because you are too busy trying to survive right now. And you, in terms of yourself, you've prioritized all of these other things that you have to get done literally every day in order to survive. You have no other time for politics and this other stuff. But the problem is then the status quo is allowed to continue, and that's what people don't know.
Well, look, for people that know me on Vesper Digital on X, they know that I scrutinize everybody. Everyone's up for grabs. I've called out Pierre. I've called out Trudeau. I've called out Harper. I've called out everybody. I've given everybody their share, because at the end of the day, I can find stuff on Harper. Harper was embroiled at that time with a $400 million scandal. I could go back to Chrétien. He was embroiled in a $300 million scandal. Mulrooney had a scandal. They all had scandals. I mean, you had Katsuya on your channel talking just about foreign interference and how, since going back maybe to Brian Mulrooney, they've known about China, and none of them have done anything. So here's what I would say. From the channels that I listen to, of the channels that I listen to, I try to encourage people to always look if the channel adds its sources, and when you read it, to be able to tell you, if you read it, to be able to tell if this is an opinion versus if this is just a fact. A fact is dispassionate. It doesn't matter how I think of Trudeau. If Trudeau does something right, and it is right, then I will just call it out for right. Having my bias involved in this, which is what's happening with a lot of social media influencers. They just have a bias. Albertans have a bias towards everyone else in Ottawa. Quebecers have a bias towards everyone else that's in Canada. Everyone has their bias, and I think getting past your bias, this is what I try to do. This is my bias. This is what it is. Is what it is enough to make me hate it? And so, for example, some things Carney has already done are already better. But if I just went with the whole liberal bias, nothing he does is going to be good for me. Nothing. Zero.
Or you're going to find some problem with any of it.
Right. And go ahead, Tanya. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think on the note of bias and sources, you also have to evaluate the source itself. X, generally speaking, is not a source. Just because Bob said something on Twitter doesn't mean it's right. As you said, it's probably an opinion.
Rick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. If it's coming from an official MP account, if it's coming from Pierre Poilievre's official account, and I want to know what he says on a particular subject, then it becomes a source. But when it's just, Bob arguing about Bill C-2, is that a source? Is that an opinion? Odds are it's not a source.
Well, here's a prime example. So in one of the question period episodes last week, the Conservatives stood up and they were saying that Gregor Robertson had this $10 million in real estate that he hit, and we went timeout. And instead of continuing on the video, commenting on that, and of course the Liberals are corrupt and everything, we actually stopped recording and said, okay, where the hell is that coming from?
Right.
And so we went to find where that was coming from in order to verify that, okay, this is where you guys got this from.
Right, and it ended up in us getting a subscription to a newspaper so that we could obtain that information.
Well, this is why I come to you guys, and believe me, I'm not plugging you. You guys are not perfect.
We are plugs, though.
You are. Yes, you are plugs.
You're a plug.
I'm not a plug, you're a plug, but that's not the point here. Okay. I think what I'm trying to say is when I come to this channel, and this is how we met, right? I was being fed information that I could systemically take, not only digest, okay, it was complicated, but I could go and look, and initially I was like, some of the stuff when Ryan was saying it, when you guys were under the avatars back then, the drawings, and I was like, that can't be true. And then I started looking at what Ryan was saying, and Tanya, what you were saying, Fox at that time, and I was like, holy cow, it's true. Then I watched again. It's true. Then I watched again. But I checked. I didn't just take you at your word because you sounded believable. Now, I'm a really good public speaker, and I could make people believe things that shouldn't be there. And it's not because I'm a Middle Eastern salesman or anything like that, okay? It's because it's like that trope, I was watching The Mummy Returns the other day. It's always the one guy that's like this, you want my camel? You want to buy this? And I have it. He's the fastest camel. I swear, he's the fastest camel. Okay, and so it's. I want people that I know will check the sources and come back to me. And what I've seen with you guys is you are able to separate your bias from what the fact is. I'll give you another example, Ryan. So remember when everybody on social media, when Trudeau was Prime Minister, Tanya, remember when everyone was accusing him that he had molested somebody and so on and so forth?
Yes.
I dug and I dug and I dug and I dug. This was like a 3-month expedition, and there was only one case that it led to, which was out in BC, which was a car collision. And I was like, okay, so there is no actual evidence. This is where we fall into this danger that you guys are talking about. They're like, they signed an NDA. I'm like, okay, well, where's the proof of this NDA? Well, they wouldn't show it to anyone. It's private. Well, if it's private, how do you know that it happened? Were you recording them when they were doing this private meeting? And
there was only one publication that actually ran anything. It's where the story was born. It was down in Buffalo
Times. Yeah, the Buffalo Times, and they were a satire website ultimately. And
basically, it's like if you believed the Beaverton
or the Onion
and you took that as your story.
And let's also be honest. Let's move a little bit into echo chambers too, right? So it's not like the Conservatives didn't Poilievre take a shot at that one time in the House of Commons. The Conservatives were putting out basically media that was shooting at Trudeau about this whole thing when none of it was true. None of it is provable. Now, one of Trudeau's high school, when he was a teacher, and there was another teacher, yes, this person was involved in pedophilia, and he was arraigned and arrested and everything. And I think you see how people make these associations? It's kind of the inverse of what we do in marketing, right? So I need to not only show you a picture and nice videos to associate positive thoughts to a product. This could happen in reverse also. It's guilt by association. If this happened and you are somewhere in the nexus of this, it must mean this happened with you too. And this is where the kind of cultic echo chamber grows from, where the people that want to make money off this or gain some kind of advantage, whether it be political, financial, will literally throw fuel on this fire and make it so sensational that at this point, everyone will just believe it until it's disproven. But it doesn't help, and I think you both will agree with all the coverage that you guys have been doing, it doesn't help that a lot of conspiracy theories have actually come true also. So a lot of things people have said ended up being right, for example, when it came to the COVID vaccines and how a lot of things were happening.
And everyone was saying, well, it probably came from a lab, and there was so much pushback from the mainstream media that didn't come from lab, and then lo and behold, that's what happened, right?
Well, and it's interesting because I remember saying that very early on, because not only did I do my co-op in an animal lab, but I had also worked in a human laboratory for a while. And people make mistakes all the time. You don't follow the safety protocols. Something gets out. People get sick. Something happens, right? And that was my theory way back when. And the media kept telling us, no, it came from a bat.
But see, this is the problem. We opened a Pandora's box during COVID. All they had to do was say, I don't know.
Right.
This whole Fauci thing with 6 feet, there was no science proving it. On one hand, the masks don't do something. Then they do something. Then they don't do. The thing is, it created this subsect of the population that no longer, and rightfully so, is going to doubt anything the government says. How could you get something so big, so wrong, and then expect me to continue to believe you?
Well, yeah, and I think that's it right there, is that I think because of social media, we're afraid to say, I don't know. I have no idea what the answer to your question is. I have no idea how to fix this. And I think it's worse when there's mass panic. Like you have the government telling you there's this new virus out. It could kill people. It could kill everyone. It could kill no one. We have no idea. So I think an I don't know in that situation is even worse than just in a normal situation.
So I had an account that was basically a clothing line out in New York City, and I was part of a team of consultants, and at that time we were doing a little bit of damage control, okay? And somebody in the organization was involved in something very illicit. I'm not going to go into it. I had signed documents, but the point is, there are times also you can't just come out and say no, because that would imply that you are probably complicit. And so from a marketing firm, McKinsey, or all these firms, right, think tanks, or whatever you want to call them, their job is to never give you I don't know, because if you tell the sheep I don't know, the sheep panic. You have to tell the sheep what they want to hear, which is one of my favorite quotes from Thomas Sowell, is that he said, it was never the job of con artists to convince the skeptical, but to keep the gullible continue believing what they want to believe. So when Trudeau came out and would say things like, we're going to close the border, as though, I don't know, like bacteria doesn't travel across this invisible border or something like that. The problem is we want to be told, we want to feel secure, we want to feel reassured, and governments know that, which is why they always act and say the things that they want to say. But the jig is up. Northern Perspective and a litany of other channels have shown that governments have done things. Now, the problem is, how do I parse who is right and who is just trying to make a quick buck on this? Well, let me give some people some tips, and we can head into another subject. One of the ways is the sensational factor, sensationalism. if I am using a whole lot of bravado or a lot of acting or a lot of anything that I can't say with a straight face, even if it sounds monotone and slightly boring, if it's a fact, it's a fact. I don't need to color the fact. I don't need to paint the fact. The fact is the fact. And usually facts are not very long and convoluted, and there's a whole narrative of jargon and storytelling behind it. There's me giving you the fact, and then there's me giving you what I think of the fact. But if I make those two one, that's me telling you a story. Look out for storytellers. Storytellers, people that just go on telling a story without isolating what the fact is, and then here's my opinion of said fact. Be wary of those people. People that combine those two in terms of information are usually the people that are trying to twist that information into what they want it to be, right? One of the things, and I've said this to you guys before, as a Christian, there are even Christian ministers who do this using the Bible, right? Some people, the Bible will say this, and that's all it says, right? Love your enemies. But let's say this particular person hates his father and he happens to be a minister. He will read it and then give you a out of context verse from somewhere else in the Bible that'll say you can hate your enemy, right? In other words, I can distort and turn the truth into what I want by telling a story. And usually that's how they do it. They'll never give it to you straight. They'll say it in a story. I hope that helps people. Look for people that are very action, bravado, show, flashy, all that stuff constantly, but fusing the facts with their stories to tell a narrative that they want. Okay.
Well, and here's the other thing is that a lot of these other problems are stemming from the fact that some people are showing these, call them stories, in 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. These are very complex things in a lot of cases. Like there was a lot of bravado about Bill C-5 that was going on there, and everyone was going after the Conservatives for voting for it. And
we covered it in 3 videos because that's how much it took. And
we still may not be done. I know the Senate is fast tracking it, but still, these are very complex bills and complex issues. So if people are saying, giving you which is the most dangerous, they give you one piece of evidence, one mini fact, and then they use that to say, oh, well, this is ridiculous. See, it's a uniparty. You can't trust these guys. And they immediately lead you down the emotional path and away from the actual fact.
Look, let's make it flat out. There are people out there, guys, on social media that just want to make money. Period. End of story. Just, okay? If you want facts, ultimately, there's a reason why we went to school. We learned to read. We know how to read a book. We have an iPhone or an Android. We can look up the information ourselves. If you want to... Now, here's another thing that I think we need to tell people. Yes, some things in government are very complicated, but not because when you read it, it's complicated. Not everything is legalese. It's the fact that there are so many things dependent on other things. Like the Constitution of Canada is tied to, let's say, this act. So it's more of a question of time, folks, than understanding. You can literally read it and you will understand it. It's just a question of time. And if you don't have the time to look it up yourself, then you will remain basically at the mercy of whoever it is that you're listening to. The best that we can do is say, listen, while some people have their point of view on X, just make sure it's not unbelievably over-the-top sensational tabloidism. The best we can do to help people that don't have the time to research it is to tell them, look for people that demonstrate a persona of acting rather than this is what it is. It's not that it's not bad, but this is what's bad in it. And if people that are telling you it's all good, don't believe them. People that tell you it's all bad, don't believe them. There's always nuggets of good and bad in everything. In me,
there's
particularly,
always nuance, yeah.
So there's like all of us, right? Northern perspective or me and my stuff, there's good and bad. And I think you just need to take that time.
There's a phrase that everybody should practice. We practice it, which is trust but verify. Trust but verify. That is something that everyone should be mindful of whenever they're on social media. Again, when the Conservatives say something and they put out a fact that sounds sensational and it's surprising.
And they have done that. And they have
Right?
done that.
100%. And we don't immediately say, oh my goodness, well, let's tell everybody that. We say, where did you get that? Because I want to know where you got that. And if we can't verify that, we're not going to push it.
No.
Because we need something to be able to say, listen, everybody, the Conservatives said this, and this is where we found it, so you can go and read for yourself. Trust but verify. And if you cannot verify,
Do not
then
trust.
you should not trust.
Right. Now, let's also make the distinction, folks, if you want
That's
to
a
just
different
be
category.
entertained. I mean, no, who's going to... Right. If you're looking for this and you know it's not true or you don't care if it's true or not, we're not talking to you because you just want entertainment. But I challenge people, please don't base your facts so that you're in your circles off of people that have not verified or at least point you to the sources that they're saying.
Here's a question. Do you think entertainment should be completely separate from politics because it can have real world ramifications?
Well, isn't that what's happened though, right? COVID created where politics became our entertainment. We were glued. Initially, we were all glued to find out, were we allowed to leave the country? Can we leave our homes? Can we do this? And then we started seeing the lies, maybe some of the like we said, bravado, the acting, all this stuff. And we all kind of just, we were sucked into this world of politics and just the sheer ridiculousness of it, and some like bills that we have that are ridiculous, some laws that we have that are ridiculous, the inconsistencies, the fact that we're paying tons in taxes and that we're seeing that nothing is actually getting done that we would like, and that tons of money is just going to these private organizations that is our money leaving the country. Like, who are these people that we elected? Why do they do the things that they do? It became entertainment, Tanya. It's not that we want... I don't find it particularly entertaining. I'll watch a Star Trek movie any day over politics. But because it so deals with our lives and the fact that we've all become so aware of the political scene and all the little nuances and everything, the fact that social media is like the perfect hub for this, like X, for example, to just throw shade and make outlandish statements and literally everything... Yeah, it's become entertainment. And here's the question. I'll fire back a question at both of you. Had social media not existed, would it have been entertaining?
So the quick answer to that is no, because you wouldn't have people with the means to turn it into entertainment.
And the interaction, right?
Here's this thing that we do on Northern Perspective, though, and I find things interesting because I learn. Like, even when I have time to watch TV, which is almost never, I almost always put on a documentary because I want to be learning something I didn't know before, so I can go, oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, but you're a nerd. That's normal.
Yes.
For a nerd.
Yeah. But my point is, like, here on Northern Perspective, we don't jazz it up. Like, we have fun on Sunday nights with the memes and stuff in interacting with the audience. But generally, I think what makes Northern Perspective special or different is that we find the little facts that they're absolutely 100% true, but you didn't know them before. So it's interesting, not because it's flashy, but because you're learning something that maybe you didn't know before. Like, for example, why do they drag the speaker down the aisle with the prime minister on one side and the leader of the opposition on the other when he's elected? It's because the prime minister and the leader of the opposition would literally have to drag the speaker to his chair because nobody wanted to be speaker. Because if you did it wrong, the king would take your head.
Well, it all comes down to the fact that, one of the things that we really appreciate is when people say, I never used to follow politics and I thought it was boring. And then after listening to you guys, I'm a political junkie now. And I think the reason for that is because I think every single person on the planet will find a topic boring if they don't understand it, because they're literally, if you can't understand something, you are not consuming it. And it's like if you sat down at a nuclear physics, lecture, and you are not a nuclear physics student or a math student, you're going to fall asleep because you have no idea what's going on. So because we're explaining literally the rules of the game, and the strategy of the game and the moves, people start to understand it, and then when they see it on their own, they recognize the game
those
being
patterns.
played.
Yeah. Oh, I saw that. In this bill.
Well, I'm gonna correct a little bit. Maybe it's not a correction, but maybe
No,
it's
we're
a
right.
Clarification. Yeah, all right. You're right. You're always right. Sure. Yeah. All right. Listen.
When we're talking to you, yes.
Yeah. Just because I'm an Arab salesman doesn't
Shots
mean you
fired.
get to say that. All right. Don't worry.
Shots fired.
Here's the thing. Before COVID, I would say that the majority of people found politics boring.
100%.
After COVID, and because it so impacted my life and your life and everyone's life, it became a necessity. You two are a byproduct, like many other channels, of a necessity to find out who is it that's doing this to my life, to my pocket, to my freedom, to my this. Because
and
it was
how?
never... Right, because let's face it, folks. 1990, nobody cared. Maybe a few people cared about politics, really eager people, like Poindexter types, right? But the general person was living their life, traveling, doing whatever they wanted. Politics is boring. Okay, that's an error. We should have known. We should have been involved. But when you're not threatened, really threatened, right, with poverty, how many food banks are overflowing now? Do we even have enough food banks anymore? Housing is an issue. The economy is dropping like a bag of potatoes. Our freedoms are apparently being threatened. Surveillance, and when all these things begin to happen, you two become relevant. People like that become relevant. The danger now is, yes, while we do need people on the front lines that are grassroots, that are willing to look things up as they are, we also need to know that the reason people find things entertaining in politics today is not because politics in and of itself is entertaining. It's because of what we've been conditioned to do. We are glued to this. And let's face it, if we're being honest, guys, you asked me about the election. The election showed me that less people are interested in politics in Canada than ever before. We are living in our own little echo chamber if we're not willing to look at the numbers of people that went to vote, okay, to find out how many people are really tuned in to politics compared to previous years. Based on your analysis, would you say that Canadians are more involved in politics as a country or less involved compared to previous years? And based on just the election.
So more Canadians are paying attention to politics. I think that's reflected in the fact that the Conservatives ended up having a historically high number of votes. But the main issue is that I think you still have at least half the country that is either completely disengaged, because we still had 35% of Canadians did not vote.
I think it was 32 or 33%, yeah.
And that's 32% of the
eligible electors.
the current number of electors, because that's millions of more now that didn't vote than in the previous election.
Yeah.
And then I think it's just reflected in the fact that it's a statistical anomaly where you have the Liberals down here. A guy comes in, nobody knows who they are. He comes in, and then the mainstream media tells everybody, hey, don't worry, this is the guy that's going to fix all your problems. And a lot of these Canadians said, oh, okay, thank you for removing the ability or the need to think. I'm just going to do that and then go back to my life.
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, and I'll end on this. If you started Trudeau Sr., Pierre Elliott Trudeau, he really got everyone's attention politically for his insane policies that he was doing. Then he was out. Mulroney comes in, and then we get this period where everything is just kind of like, it's not insanity. It's just like, like this, like this, like this. I'm not saying it was perfect. I'm saying it's just like this. There's no more insanity. And then Justin comes, and then he kind of went like, hold my beer, Dad, and just went completely insane. And this is what happened, right? Back then, a lot of Albertans will tell you what Pierre Elliott Trudeau did. I have no
100%.
idea. I have no idea how bad it was, like the previous generation, right? Because I'm not born here. My parents aren't born here. But if you ask Canadians that were born here from the previous generation and the one before, they'll tell you how bad it was under Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Now we lived through our Pierre Elliott Trudeau. We're going to be telling this to our kids, and our kids are going to be completely disconnected if they get into a Mark Carney, Stephen Harper, Jean Chrétien type of government. Do you understand? Where it's not sensational anymore. The people that are entertained by sensationalism, which is why a lot of social media influencers are just dying out left and right, because Trudeau gave you a whole lot of material to work with. And now Carney has like an iron grip on his party where he has them in line. He has them showing up. You better wear a suit. You better know what you're going to talk about. We're not going to do as much talking in the House of Commons like like Trudeau, who loved to hear the sound of his own voice. He understands that this is a time to we need to throw water on this fire. And we said this the last time. Honestly, the only reason the Conservatives lost is precisely because Trudeau decided to prorogue government. It was that prorogation, that cooling off of the anger that was being pushed, even among liberals. Forget Conservatives. Among liberals, they were ready to flip. But that time of cooling off, cooler heads prevail, was... look, I don't like it, but it was the correct strategy. And it didn't come from Justin, because Justin didn't want to leave. They told him, this is what you're going to do. And God knows what else they said. So, entertainment, listen, if we get back to where housing is semi-affordable, that the things are not over the top. Like, I paid $500 the other day for half of what I would normally be able to buy for $500 for groceries. Okay? I'm serious about that, by the way. If, let's say, we were to go back to that, I would start finding politics less interesting. Not that I would be completely disconnected. I would just be... My life is kind of going back to normal, and I wouldn't need to find out what they're going to break next.
Well, because that aspect of your life has been de-risked, and when you're dealing with issues even at home, like let's say you have a rodent infestation and there's this one part of your house where they're all coming in, you're going to be watching that like a hawk. Once that's been de-risked, you're not going to pay attention to that anymore because you have better things to do.
Tanya, how long are we still in a risk?
In a risk
in Canada
for government?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think, I'm hoping that the Conservatives are going to be able to get in the next election. And I think we're going to be at risk for a while even after that, because like we've said before, Pierre Poilievre is not Batman and his ministers are not,
I'm Batman.
The Justice League. But my point being is that he's not just going to swoop in and fix everything overnight. It's going to take a very long time. Some things they might not be able to fix till their second term.
Well, and this is why we said that it might be even a blessing in disguise that the Conservatives are not in government right now, because
it's going to get worse.
They wouldn't be able to flip the mortgage crisis that we are now entering in Canada. And they would have worn it because they're in government at the time that's happening. But now Carney's in, and he's going to be wearing that. And
by the way, you and I have talked about this on X, Ryan. At any moment, through any bill that needs to be passed, a vote of non-confidence can be brought up. People were worried about this last thing about the speech from the throne and why the Conservatives... Listen, man, a vote of non-confidence with the bloc is a very real thing, and it can happen at any moment. And Canadians should be ready for another election at any moment. But like you said, it was probably a smart thing. Hey, you guys want to lead still? Let's see if you can untangle Trudeau-level stupidity, right? And then let's go from there. That's fine. Let's show everybody that you even with the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, Bank of everything guy, let's see if you can untangle this. And if you can't, maybe liberals at that point will finally wake up and realize, hey, it's not so much fun. It's kind of like the NDP, right? Hey, it's not so much fun anymore, grandstanding and virtue signaling anymore. We actually want somebody that's serious, and we're tired of the entertaining House of Pain jumping around while poor crippled woman is right next to you kind of leadership. We want people that actually can make change. And I hope the Conservatives are going to be the ones that do that coming in the next vote of non-confidence or election.
Yeah, and one thing that we've heard from individuals within the party was that maybe things were not bad enough yet for Canadians to elect a conservative government. Maybe they think, oh, it's still okay. There's still a very large subset of Canadians, I believe, that they haven't lost their houses, or maybe their houses are paid off, so they have no idea how much the mortgage rate increase is affecting everybody. You know, they're maybe upper middle class, so they notice the increase in the grocery bill, but they don't really see it that bad because maybe they're empty nesters, maybe their kids have all moved off to college or have families of their own.
And listen, we got to give credit where credit is due. The most wide-eyed is Alberta. Of all the provinces that saw the problem for what it is, not just energy, just in general, is Alberta. And this is a shout out to the entire province of Alberta for seeing most clearly. They're not being necessarily just cultic. They saw the problems most clearly. These are salt of the earth type people. I'm not saying that there aren't across Montreal, Ontario, but when you look at the voting demographic and how much conservatives were voted in, I got to give props to Alberta, and I really hope that, you know, maybe with all the rhetoric of separation and everything, that Albertans find a way to communicate more intelligibly, let's say, to everybody else that's in Canada about their values. Because honestly, this is a war of values. And I'm saying values because Mark Carney's book is called Values. And therein lies the problem. Now, normally you would call it, worldview perspective on things. What Mark Carney, the Liberals, value might not be what we value, for instance. And this is where it's a war of values at this point. And I really give kudos to Alberta and to many parts of the ridings of other provinces that flipped to conservatives, because it is a war of values. And to have conservative values is not to just be, have dandruff, wear suits, and be uptight about it, fiscally spent. No, it's about understanding that there is a thread and an identity that we all enjoyed, man. And the Liberals under Trudeau and now under Carney, for now, seem to not be grasping. And yes, some conservatives are a little bit more center. Let's be honest. They're not completely right wing. You know what I mean? They're not MAGA, let's put it that way. They're not completely Trumpian. Not that there's anything wrong with the fact that we had previously how Trump was, but they're not complete extremist right wings here in Canada. The politicians that we have were usually in the middle, right? They differed on some things, and I think you've talked about that, Ryan and Tanya, so well that I've learned a lot from Northern perspective over the years that I've needed to see that it wasn't just on one side, it was on both sides. It's just that right now the spotlight is on Team Red.
Well, we'll see how it goes. And, there are going to be unavoidably some good things that this Liberal government will do, probably, law of averages. And, we need to give credit where credit is due so that we continue to be accurate and understand how things are going. But I think Mark Carney has set up his government for failure in making only these massive promises, not seeming to understand how slow government moves and how uncooperative the provinces can be, with each other, and B, with Ottawa.
Right.
2, they didn't give NDP party status. That is going to come back and bite them in the back when it's at its most critical. And I think Mark Carney thinks that this is just a big vacation for him. That's the way he
absolutely
seems to be acting.
And let's be honest, guys. All Carney is just Justin without the bravado, without the show, without the theater. But it doesn't mean he's logistically equipped for this job. Right, just because you happen to know how banking does not mean you know how to run a country.
So, anyway, we've rambled on for a while. We've covered lots of ground as we usually do. But I just want to thank you for coming on, Ellie.
Oh,
and
come on, I love it.
For those interested, this is Ellie's website. It's ellie-mac.com. Take a look. Even if you're not interested in getting design work, there's some phenomenal footage and pictures on here. This is all Ellie's original work. He has done all of this, and if you are interested in having some high-end design work, go ahead and contact him through this website. We highly recommend him.
Yeah.
And you won't be disappointed with the quality that he brings.
Also, I want to throw in something else. I do a whole lot of consultancy also for a lot of my clients. As you guys well know, there is consulting services also. So if you ever just need, maybe not necessarily design work, but if you just need help in general with your brand or something that you want to do, feel free to contact me through the site. You can get my information from there. And Ryan, Tanya, it has been a pleasure, honestly, from the day we met. And I want to give you guys a nod of the hat. You've kept your integrity intact. You've kept the facts intact. It's been hard, I'm sure, for both of you and on Vincent as well. But thank you for continuously bringing the facts to the front. And thank you for separating what is the fact from what is the opinion. And that's what keeps me as somebody that continues to enjoy the show and will continue to watch the show. The second you do that and stop doing that is, I think, going to be a detriment, but I'm sure you're not going to stop doing that. So I appreciate you, and it's a point of differential for me among all the other things that I watch online. I'm looking for people that keep their sources straight. I appreciate that about you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.